interrupting current doom and gloom in women's health research to actually talk about women's health research. Couple good conversations that we've been having, talking about running in pregnancy. Does it mean anything for you in postpartum? And thank you to Grania Donnelly that reminded me of the 2021 study. Izzy Moore and then Grania and Emma were also on that. They were looking at specifically stress urinary incontinence in runners in postpartum, but they did end up looking at if running in pregnancy was a predictor. And it was, but there were some interesting things, like if you had really high mileage before pregnancy, then you're probably running in pregnancy, and then you're more likely to return in postpartum. All things that I would be really curious to suss out. Not the logistics on that, but like some of the other like biopsychosocial side conversations. It's like, okay, physically they're capable of doing it. Socially, if you tend to be, a 5-day-a-week runner, for you to stop running. And I mean, I love listening to other people talk about, if they're ultra runners or chronic marathoners or things like that. They tend to be a little bit more type A. They're going to be less likely, I think, to give something up and more likely to get back to it postpartum. So I wonder, and again, I have no idea. This is why I'm not a researcher. I just ask the questions. How to dissect out, how much of this is just, hey, they're athletes and this is what they do, versus they're athletes. They now have this great capacity physiologically to do this stuff, which results in them being able to do it in postpartum. But one of the things that they did mention was even those high mileage pre-pregnancy and pregnancy moms in postpartum, it took them a little bit longer to get back to that pre-pregnancy volume. And again, I mean, and that brings about a good question as well, is like, how much of that is us being like super conservative and not having, and again, this paper was 2021, the UK guidelines were only 2019. Like, how much of that is like, are we underdosing or not knowing what to tell people, even if they are elite? We've started to have those conversations a little bit, but I think it's a really big gray area for those of us that are like middle of the pack, back of the pack runners, which how much could you do? And I'm not that girl that, like, if I don't run 5 days a week, like I'm gonna die or something like that. And same thing in postpartum. Like, it wasn't that thing that, like, it's definitely my identity. And I think it's that paper that goes into what some of the predictors are that you need to consider as, if you are using running for mental health or stress reasons or things like that. But that's why I love this conversation. And again, everybody's summary is this has to be a nuanced individual conversation because there's so many variables, and not to mention in between pregnancy and postpartum, a whole lot of things happen. And again, that was the point of this particular paper, was looking at stress urinary incontinence, but they also asked about heaviness and pressure and things like that. So anyway, fun conversations, but I'm really curious, and I appreciate this pregnant postpartum athlete. They made a comment on one of them that said, hey, isn't it cool how far we've come in just a short period of time, where, it used to be, oh gosh, no, you can't run at all until at least, several months in. And now we have, some people maybe a little bit before 6 weeks, some people between 6 and 12 weeks, some people after 12 weeks. We've got some data to say that the longer that people wait, the less likely they are to go back. But again, like, does that mean that if you wait too long, like, you're screwed? And that was not my experience at all. And again, between kids, like one kid versus many kids, I took a lot longer to get back after my second because I had 2 freaking kids. And I didn't really run during pregnancy because I didn't have time, and logistically, it wasn't a priority. But does that mean that like all bets are off later? No. And I absolutely feel like I've proven that to myself, you know, running, you know, being able to do half marathons and things like that many, many years out. So I don't know, really curious if you are either pregnant and running and you're trying to figure out what to do, or you're postpartum and you've navigated this a few times, kind of what your thoughts are. And what people told you, because I think we're still running into that. Those of us that are like in the space, like I think we're able to have these conversations, but there's still people out there like, nope, you're pregnant, don't shake the baby. So curious, but let me know kind of what your experience has been, and if you're a provider, kind of what you're seeing as well. Because I think